Hi everyone, this is Jilly Little Zen Crone. Welcome to Zen Without Walls. Um, Recently, I was reading an article on Daily Ohm called "We Are All Mirrors for Each Other." Now, this is going to tie in to the title of the video. I promise. So just bear with me. So we are all mirrors for each other. What does this really mean? Um, a lot of you might already be familiar with this term, being mirrors for each other. For those of you that aren't, what this means is that every relationship we ever have, the people in those relationships are reflecting qualities that we actually have within ourselves back to us. And we do the same for them. So, for all the people in your life that you have these easy, wonderful relationships with, and all of the people that you have relationships with that you really admire, the reflection that is coming back to you are qualities within yourself that are admirable. And this is the reason why, we're attracted to these people too. Like attracts like, right? Likewise, hold on, the people that drive us up the wall and are on our last possible nerve, the people that irritate us and just seem to push every last button that we have, the people who are nastiest to us also are mirrors for us. And that is really a hard concept for us to take. It was for me to take, because we don't want to see these qualities in other people, these horrible qualities in other people, as being pieces of ourselves. And yet they are. So if you're still with me and you haven't turned this video off yet, I promise it's all going to turn out okay. This concept of being mirrors for each other is not just a Buddhist concept, but it's also very Jungian. Carl Jung was a psychologist who, I think he was born in 1865, actually. In his practice, he lived into the 1950s, I think. And well, look him up. He's a lot of what he used tarot cards in his practice, and one of his theories was the theory of synchronicity and synchronistic events. So what this is about the people that keep coming up in our lives, the situations that keep happening to us. If you've ever, as the title of the video says, thought to yourself, why does this keep happening to me? That is generally a synchronistic event. It's a pattern that keeps happening. And what Jung says is that pattern will keep repeating itself until we learn the lesson that we need to learn from that person or that situation. And what one of the articles I read said, buckle up, it said that if we look at all of these synchronistic events that happen in our life, and all of these people, the common denominator is us. We can't change anybody else, but we can learn and change ourselves. And when we do learn, and when we can change our own behavior in relationship to these events, to these situations, to these people, we find that, number one, we don't suffer anymore because we've learned what we need to learn. And we grow. And so these situations and people come into our space less and less frequently. So that was a lot. Now, it's not about blame. It's not about blaming ourselves for being in this situation again and again and again. Like we're somehow stupid, or we're somehow flawed because we keep attracting the same kind of people into our life, or the same things keep happening to us. A lot of how we learn to react in situations is so deeply ingrained in us, we don't even know it exists or where it came from, because these things started happening to us. These behaviors, these reactions started happening, being ingrained in us as toddlers. And then, they came from our parents and our grandparents and our aunts, uncles, cousins, families, our friends, their families, schoolmates, school teachers, on and on and on it goes. And so when we are in a situation where we are irritated, where we are like on our last nerve, hanging on by a thread, and we have that feeling that comes, a lot of times our first reaction is to strike out, is to try to justify ourselves, is to fix it somehow, fix it. So what we want to learn is a different way. And that's what I want to talk about tonight. So Pema Chodron, her last name is spelled Chodron, and her first name is Pema, Pema. She is a Buddhist teacher. She's the abbess of a monastery convent in Nova Scotia. She is from the Shambhala tradition, and she's a wonderful teacher. She had been married. I think she was born in the late 30s, early 40s. She had been married, has children, and then became a Buddhist nun. Lots of wisdom in her words. So my suggestion is that you go to your library or your used bookstore or Amazon and find any book by her and read it, because she's fabulous. And you can also find her on YouTube. There's lots of video out there of her speaking, and her speaking of things like what I'm talking about, because she wrote a book that I've read a few of her books, but the last one that I read was called Taking the Leap. And it's about identifying our old habits and working through them, and our fears. And you've heard me describe when something happens to trigger us, that's like the picking of the scab. It's like somebody picking, right? She calls that, it's a Sanskrit word called Shenpa, Shenpa, and it means hook. And oh my gosh, what a great metaphor. What a great analogy that is. That when we get into a situation that, we're talking to that person who, is our nasty neighbor, or, the person that sits next to us in church, or our boss who constantly berates us, and we can feel it coming. And then the hook goes in and it gets yanked and we're off. We want to not get there. And so what I want to talk to you about are 3 ways to help us to work through, learn from these synchronistic events so they don't keep happening to us. And the first thing we want to do, and I've talked about this before, is when we feel like this hook is starting to get sunk, we want to remove ourselves from the situation. We want to take a sacred pause. We don't owe anyone an explanation, an answer. We do not have to react in the moment. As a matter of fact, when we do, when we choose to react in the moment, when we choose to stand up for ourselves, stand our ground, in that moment, it is generally never good. I have to think of designing women, and oh my gosh, what was her name? The Sugar Baker sister, Dixie Carter. She was the actress, and she was classic for just in the moment getting her point across and cutting the other person down to size. And man, I used to think, God, I want to be her. In reality, it usually doesn't work that way. And even if it does, it kind of leaves the other person either angry or feeling like shit. And we really don't want to do that to the other person either. We might think we do, but in reality, our job is to reduce suffering in this world. So the best thing to do to start that process is to take a sacred pause, to just walk away. Do what we tell our kids to do all the time, just walk away. And even when we are in a meeting, in a heated conversation with our mother, or our kid, or whoever it may be, we can always excuse ourselves. We can take a walk. We can go into another room. We can take a break. My daughter and I went through a really volatile time. I'm telling you, the ages between 11 and 16 with this child were hell. And I wish I had known a lot of this then. Now, luckily, her therapist was smart and taught us that it was okay to take a break. So we would start to get into it, and she would say, I need to take a break. And that was the signal, or I would say, I need to take a break. And so that was the signal that we needed to go in, ground ourselves, go to our rooms and chill out for a while. If we can do that, if we can wrap our heads around this concept of not always having to have the answer, and just removing ourselves for a minute, and really kind of get to the what's real, I think we learn a lot more, and we learn it more quickly, and we're able to go back then and communicate our point more clearly and with more grace, I think. All right. So the second thing I want to tell you is that when you can, and if you can, try to without blame. This is not about blame. This is not about we're stupid because we got ourselves into this situation, or there's something wrong with us because the same thing keeps happening over to ourselves. It's not about that. It's not about thinking, oh, I was dumb to get myself here again. Nope, it was my fault because this, that, or that happened. This is not what this is about. What we want to do is to look at what is real. What is the feeling that when that hook became embedded, what was the feeling? Now, many times it's anger, and that's the acute feeling. But if we can peel that back another layer, there's usually something else residing under there that's deeper. And there may be something else under that that's even deeper. Sometimes we cannot get to this stuff ourselves because it's either too deep or it's we're not in a good place to do it. And so I'm here to tell you that if you need to work this stuff through with a qualified therapist, I am all about good therapy. As a matter of fact, the Jungian concept, the synchronicity thing, the very first therapist I ever went to, I always asked for homework. So I wanted something to do and something to read because I had a week or 2 weeks between therapy appointments. I didn't want to just sit there. I wanted to really put what I was learning into practice. So the very first book that she recommended to me is one I have recommended over and over and over again. It is written by a woman. She is a psychiatrist. Her name is Jean Shinoda Bolen, Bolen. The title of the book, and I will link it below, is called The Tao of Psychology, Synchronicity, and the Self. She is a Jungian psychiatrist. And it was eye-opening. So a lot of this I've been working on for many, many years in my life. Eye-opening book. And for those of us who are in the tarot community as well, or, in the tarot community, because we talk about archetypes in the tarot community with our cards, right? She wrote wonderful books about, there's one called Archetypes in Every Woman, Archetypes in Older Women, Archetypes in Men, Gods and Goddesses, and Archetypes. Oh, wonderful books. Absolutely check her out. And another book that she wrote that I absolutely adored, that somebody gave me for my 50th birthday, was Crohn's Don't Whine. Maybe I was whining about my 50th birthday too much, but it's really it's funny, and it's short, and it's just these little bits of nuggets of information. Anyway, so sit down with a therapist and work these things out. Or if you feel like you have a good friend, and by good friend I don't mean somebody who's going to tell you what you like. I mean somebody that's not going to bullshit you, somebody that's going to, with love and compassion, sit down and help you to see these things about yourself, okay? And then I would write them down. I would write down what you discover about yourself, because it's kind of like a domino effect, I think. Once you discover one thing, you're going to see it in other situations. And once we identify these things and we work through them, then what happens is that it no longer gets to us because we know. And it releases us from that situation or that toxicity. So it no longer, if that person has to still be in our life, it no longer affects us like it used to. And isn't that freedom? All right, now the third thing I want you to do is I want you to apply the 3 concepts. I know I said it was 3 things, but here's 3 more, so it's 6 in total. I want you to apply the 3 concepts of self-compassion that we've been talking about for the past few months here. So the first part of that is to be kind to yourself. No blaming. Know that, gosh, how would you know how you really felt without, or what this was really about without doing the work, right? And then offer yourself, well, not offer yourself, but realize the common humanity in this. We are all going through this. Because why? Because we're all interconnected. The minute you think that you're struggling with these kinds of situations alone, immediately know that you're not, because we are all human. We have this common humanity. We are all struggling through these things together. Everybody goes through this. And so you're not alone. And then the third thing is the best, because that is the mindful part. So once we can really wrap our heads around what this is, this concept of us being mirrors for each other, and knowing that when somebody ticks us off or presses our buttons, or we experience the hook, shenpa, we know that there's something there for us to learn. There's something there that we need to know. And once we know that, and we internalize it, the acting upon knowledge, the internalizing of knowledge, the working through of the knowledge we receive is powerful. So we get our power back and we don't struggle as much. I hope that this has helped you today. It was really eye-opening for me when I started to learn this a lot of years ago, and I'm still learning it today. I'm still working through these steps. And when you start to work through them, they almost start to then come automatically to you. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Be kind to each other, and I will see you the next time. Take care, everyone.